This conference will now be recorded.
All right, welcome to the Warren County Salary Board meeting of February 10th. We're going to dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance due to the complications of doing it online, but we'll ask that we take a brief moment of silence. As you already heard, the meeting is being recorded. There's no cause for executive session today. The minutes from December 9th are attached. Could I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those, any discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. There's actually two items of discussion on the agenda today. I'm sorry that I didn't catch that before. The first is wage for court reporter, and Judge Skirta has joined us in order to discuss that. And the second is a proposal from Sheriff Zeibel to staff increase to, I believe, 3 part-time positions for the single point of entry. The caller that just got on the line mute himself. Okay. Thanks. So first item of discussion will be the court reporter wage. Judge Skirta?
Yes, we're asking for $50,000 for the court reporter plus transcript fees. I believe yesterday Ms. Exley had a question regarding why transcripts are paid through a W-2, and with the IRS regulations, since this is a part of her duties, it has to be paid that way. I know also with the court reporter rules and doing a survey kind of statewide that that's the way most court reporters are paid who work for courts at this time. Being that we had rules, court reporter rules that initiated, I'm thinking 5 years ago, something 4 or 5 years ago, that really limited their income, set standard fees for transcripts, etc. And that was part of the responsibilities of the job. So it has to be paid by court rule as well, by actually the rules of procedure, not my rules, but the Pennsylvania rules of procedure. So that's why that is added in there. The current court reporter, I think, is at 49, is it? 48, 49, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
And Jackie has worked for the court previously for about 8 years. Jackie Sherwood was the former court reporter and has determined that she would like to come back.
Okay.
So she's not a new employee exactly. I know she'd be categorized that way and starting over. If we were to pay independent reporters, Linda, what's the average fee per day without hiring?
It's between $350 to $400 a day for a freelance reporter.
And the freelance reporter, they're not payroll related, they're contractual, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. What's the difference between being able to hire someone in that manner and a salary person? You said that you're required to have these court reporters salaried. It's just a curiosity on my part.
Well, if I were to hire for the work 2 courtrooms, but running only, let's say, 1 courtroom with a court reporter would be about $90,000 a year for contract work, as compared to 50, which is why we've always had someone in-house because it saves money in the long run.
So what the current, from what I can see, the current salary is $47,563, and the request is to elevate that to $50,000. And I guess just what's the impetus behind that?
Justification in that is that we aren't hiring someone without experience. We're hiring someone who's had 8 years of county experience. That was the reasoning behind it.
How many years has Elsie been with us?
Since 2008, I believe,
Okay, so she's been here longer.
but she started out at a lower salary.
Right.
That was
Was
at the
this
time.
budget, was the increase of $2,000 requested in the budget?
It
I
would
don't
be.
believe,
Well, it would be because we aren't going to have a court reporter, an in-house court reporter for 2 months. So it's actually will be covered. And also Elsie gets a longevity bonus. So it'd be the 48,053 is what's in the budget for that. I don't know what they put into the budget for the transcripts. I don't have a breakdown from our budget on that.
I'm sorry, I
So
didn't
I
understand. What's the 2-month gap?
Jackie isn't able to be hired until June
Oh,
15th.
okay. I see.
And Elsie's last day is April. Is it April 15th, Linda? Somewhere
April
in there.
9th. Yeah.
April 9th. Okay.
So what happens in the meantime of that 2 months? What do you do?
Right.
Well,
We're gonna
there's digital court reporting, and then we'll have to have somebody do transcripts. And Elsie is available, just can't be full-time at that point. So depending upon what we need. And we also hire freelance in the interim if we have to.
So you really won't be saving for 2 months. You'll just be paying it in a different manner.
In a different manner, but probably in some regards saving, because in terms of the transcripts, that wouldn't come through the court. The individual reporter can bill separately and not through the court that way, so that wouldn't be included.
I
Kim,
can't
could
recall,
you,
is this a non-union or a union position? This is non-union, right?
This is non-union, that's correct.
and Kim, what did the salary survey show?
The Hess survey from 2018, the midpoint for this position is $47,652.80 per year.
Okay, so the current, well, this would make sense, but the current salary is just above the
Below
midpoint.
midpoint. Or
Yeah,
it was just below.
Well, it's above the midpoint from 2018, but if you do a 2% increase, then you'd be right on par
Right.
with the current salary, which was by design, of course.
Yeah, the current salary that I put on that Excel spreadsheet does not include Miss Huser's longevity bonus. So that's why there's the difference between Linda's letter for that salary and then what I put in that, because her longevity bonus I didn't, because the new employee would not be eligible for a longevity bonus for 5 years.
I see. So what's the, okay. Well, how much is that longevity bonus currently?
It would be approximately $460. And again, that's on a scale. So, I mean, that increases every year. Once it begins at your 5th year of service, but does increase on a sliding scale per year that you're here. So.
Got it. Okay. All right. So bottom line, Judge Skirta, you're asking us to deviate from the general policy of the starting midpoint and increase this by approximately $2,000. And what is our justification for doing that?
8 years of professional experience as a court reporter in Warren County, previously freelance work, including real-time, which we have not had the opportunity with Elsie. She hasn't been able to do. Real-time is when you do the court reporting where I can actually read it as it's being done. And so she has an additional skill set. That was the reason for the deviation.
Now so when we did the salaried people and we decided to try and raise them all up, as part of what I believe, Ben and Jeff, your 3-year plan is, was it to raise them up to this survey midpoint because everyone was below it, or how did that work?
It was a
The
3-year.
court reporter, a part of that pool. Like, so we had all of the non-union positions kind of in this pool, and then utilize the CCAP information and has to do kind of a projection based on that. And so, as a part of the budget cycle, we approved an increase for the non-union positions across the board, some type of increase. And so that's kind of how we've handled it. And the general challenge during the course of the year is to try to, kind of avoid raising them without kind of evaluating everybody and that kind of a thing. So Ben, did I miss something there?
No.
So the court, I can't remember exactly what the court reporters were increased during this last cycle. I don't have it off the top of my head, but they.
Okay.
I do recall, Jeff, that she was one of the ones that you identified as being significantly below, and that's why she was increased every year, because it was significantly below whatever our rate was. But I can't remember what the former rate was. I'm sorry. Don't have that information.
Yeah, I mean that's my recollection as well, is that the court reporters are part of that pool that we tried to make adjustments for. So.
And this position was given a third over the 3-year course. That is correct. So she, on this last time, she got $2,056 to raise her up to the $47,563.
Yeah, which I think is why why they're in the mid-range of that survey.
Right.
At this point.
Well, I'm happy to count the longevity, given that this is an employee that's coming back, which would put it back in essentially count that. So if you take the 47, whatever number you just said, and then add it on 8 years of longevity, you'd be in the ballpark of what Elsie is at currently, right? $48,053.
If you have 8 years of continuous service, the longevity bonus is $340 per the contract. We go for the contract even though it's a non-union employee.
Okay, so the two options before us, it sounds like, are number one, count the longevity bonus or the longevity years previously served and set the salary for this position at $48,053, or set it at $50,000, taking into consideration the not only the years of service but also the abilities in real time. Any other questions? Do I hear a motion for one of those options?
I'll move for the 50,000 on the basis of the longevity plus the additional skill set of real time, which is conducive to technology for today in terms of court reporting.
Hear a motion? Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded for starting salary of the court reporter position at $50,000.
So just one question. So Jackie Sherwood, the person that will be taking this position, also has some additional skill sets that were not in the prior position. Is that correct, Judge?
Yes, that is correct. Because real time, it requires, she has all of this, is it software, hardware that addresses that so that I can read as she goes. If we have a judge that has a hearing impairment, or especially right now with COVID, it's really helpful when people are wearing masks and speaking to be able to actually see text sometimes rather than just guess at what somebody's saying. So in terms of accuracy, it's an additional skill set.
So is that something that we should be incorporating in a job description going forward?
I think it depends upon what the court reporter, it's not required by rule. So that's why I wouldn't want to include it in a job description, but it's a bonus if you can get somebody that has it.
Got it. And then you and Linda believe that if even with this higher rate, that you'll still come into what the budget was set for 2021?
Yes, because there'll be a gap of 2 months. And we do use, we still use a second court reporter when necessary. For instance, if Judge Hammond or I is in Forest County and we have the court reporter in Warren, we have 2 court reporters. So we have extra money in the budget for additional court reporters as necessary. We try to be frugal about that.
I guess my only concern would be that the other non-union individuals who we spent a lot of time and effort raising to the midpoint, this being one of those positions that, like Ben said, you know, we're kind of doing a one-off from that. That's
Well, that's
only.
And I agree, Trish, if it were apples to apples, but we're not really doing that when she has an additional skill set and 8 years of prior experience with the county. I think those are very adequate justifications.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my
What else?
general view of it is that you know, we've substantially increased these rates over the past few years and in many of the non-union positions, and so you know, I think that we've done quite a bit, and I think that we're going to continue to have people leave and return and those kinds of things, and I think that we got to stick to our guns on, you know, some of these rates, you know, going forward.
But let me just explain, for a position like this, they have to be trained, they have to be certified in words per minute. Out of the applicants I received, I got 1 that was hers. This was posted on Indeed, which is a website where you're going to find people with skill sets like this, and we have 1 application. So in terms of filling the position, it's extremely difficult. It's incredibly necessary for the courts, and that's a concern I have. And I appreciate everything that you're saying, but I felt I had adequate justification for those 2 reasons.
So I have a question. Kim Exley, the survey that was done, the Hess survey.
Yes.
So Elsie was just brought up to the 47,652, which is a midpoint. She obtained that in this year, correct?
Yes, and I'm looking to see, there is a little bit of a difference, so I'm going to have to go back and see why that is. I just looked at the Hess survey again this morning and noticed that difference between the 47,652.80 versus what she currently is making. So yes,
Okay,
there is a little bit of a difference.
But here's my question. If it's the 47,652, that was in 2018, correct?
That was yes, that survey was done in 18. That was done prior to me coming to the county, and that's the date that's in there. Yep.
So what I did during this discussion is I took that 47,652, and to Commissioner Kafferlin's point, if you put 2% on it for 19, 20, and 21, is that logical, Ben?
That's what I was indicating, yeah.
That would put it at 50,569.
I think I was only counting 19 and 20. Either way, that puts it at 49,560. So close enough.
So we're talking just change. If at 50, then it would be right about where it should be.
I guess the thing that influences me is that you only had 1 person that applied for the position.
Exactly. This is, and you know, it's a skill set that unfortunately, if you're in a city, you can make a lot of money at being independent. And in rural communities, it's a very sought after skill set. I know, I'm trying to think, Clearfield is down a court reporter. I'm around our region, there's several without, where they're using entirely freelance, and that's so expensive. I really hate to go that route.
Okay, any further discussion? For my part, it's a good reminder that that survey is already getting outdated and that we need to update it. And I certainly don't want to make a practice of updating wages in the middle of the year. It really needs to be done so that we can budget for it accordingly. But I can support it this time because of all those reasons just stated. If there's no other discussion, I'll call a vote. All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. Next, thank you, Judge Skirta.
Thank you.
Sheriff Zeibel, you're on.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Did you receive the, I'll just say Word document that I prepared for Miss Exley?
I did.
Okay. And I'll speak, I think I have a term in here, maybe easy math, but I will speak easy math, not down to pennies of an overall. I guess I'll present to the board the overall thought here. With the COVID restrictions, my manpower it's adequate. These COVID restrictions lift. I'm going to go back to the point of being stretched. Some of that stretch is not a, I'll say manpower issue. It's catching up with the manpower that I have, being one is in school and my new deputy to be hired needs to go to school. The next deputy, again, we've yet to cross that bridge of whether he's certified or not. But the potential of having a deputy in school is going to stretch probably at least to the summer of next year, that I will have a man on the roster who is not a fully fledged deputy, who I can use maybe for some internal type duties within. So my theory on this was to go to the board here and ask for, and I'll call it a single point guard, but we'll just refer to them as single point. I hire another single point position at, again, rough numbers, $14 an hour. That frees up a deputy at the rate of $17 to $22 an hour. Two men right now at single point, both part-time at 24 hours a week. That gives me 48 hours. So we'll say one man to man that single point Monday through Friday. I have to offset that with a 40-hour deputy at a rate that is somewhere between $4 and $5, give or take $5 and $9 to $12 more each week, week after week after week. This brings in the discussion of having an armed presence at single point, which I feel, unfortunately, in today's world is a necessity if we're going to do this the way it should be done. So my overall proposal is hire another single point, starting salary at $13.74, which is the going rate at this moment, which the other guys are hired under. Eventually ask for a slight raise once two of these single point men would go through Act 235. Act 235 in layman's term is an armed security clearance. They have fingerprints, a psych test, a physical, an eye test, a hear test, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and some actual classroom and weapons qualifications. To certify these single point guards would be, again, rough math, $778, say just easy math, $800. Back to the argument of cost. Single point is costing through a deputy working single point, as in the bolded first page there, is between $562 and $777 per week. That's what I'm paying my deputies to sit at single point, augmenting the, we'll just say, the security man. So I reduce that yearly, again, $29,000 to $40,000, if that is in fact the case. Now, are we quote unquote saving that money again, I'm not naive. That's not a cost saving to the county per se, that you are going to have 40,000 more than you didn't have last year, because that deputy is still employed. But that deputy can be used where I need him, and overall reduce my ever being brought up my overtime budget. Overtime comes when I run out of guys. So I have to go to part-timers. I have to go to keeping guys over to fulfill this mission. If I have an extra guy every day for 8 hours, that frees a lot of that time up to maybe have a guy working, say, noon to 8 or something like that, to handle some of these things that come up at close of business with PFAs through the judges' chambers and stuff like that. That I have a couple guys working till 8 o'clock at night that could maybe handle some of that and ultimately eliminate that overtime. That's the overall gist of the thought of this, that one single point man starting at $13.74 is much cheaper than that same deputy working that. Going back to the arming of that man, I feel to arm that person an additional $1.26 an hour, because he has to go through some hoops. He has some certification that he has to maintain and some standards through yearly qualifications and stuff like that. That will come out of his pocket, of ammunition, training cost, which is minimal, and a 5-year certification that he has to meet. A bonus or an incentive to keep some of these guys is every 5 years, or the first 5 years that you've stayed with the county would eat the $130 recertification, so that they're not worried that, yay, at 5 years it's going to cost me some more money of $130. That gives them a tiny bit of incentive to stay on at least and give us 5 years of service at the single point. The cost to get Act 235 is roughly there, again, at $778. I would want two of the single point personnel to go through that. One, I just don't think it would be appropriate to ask, or I don't think it's declined anyhow, that they would be interested in being in armed security. Again, just a talk between us. I would want these armed security men, the average person coming through the courthouse, average employee of the courthouse, would never see a firearm. This would be a concealed carry type thing. And there's some theories behind that as well, that somebody does come in, they might not think that the single point people are a threat because they don't have a firearm. So if they do come into the building and want to cause harm, they may give those guys the option or a pass, or tell them to get out the door, and maybe save their life, which in fact this man could turn around and engage that threat if need be. And that show of force just won't be there. These guys will be dressed in their polos, khakis, we call it a transport uniform, and have a hidden gun on their ankle or a hidden gun within their waistband or something like that. So the average worker in this courthouse and the average public would never see that firearm, which I think is an advantage to all. But that consideration cost of that man, that training, we would make that up, in my opinion, very quickly through that extra deputy that I would have to eliminate, number one, the overtime on the backside, and free deputies up to go back to the backlog of warrants we have, the backlog of civil papers and stuff like that. So that freeing up a deputy would I think in the long run pay overall to the tune of the numbers on that first page in bold math, but it wouldn't come out of that salary savings. It would ultimately come out of what I have to pay these guys at 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 a couple times a week when I have to send somebody to go do something that just came into our office. So that's the proposal in a nutshell, and I'd be glad to entertain any kind of questions from the salary board.
If I could start in reverse order of the expenditures, any fees, you fit that into your budget. We're not worried about that, and that wouldn't come before this board. The rate to carry a firearm, there are several positions within the county, most notably probation, that have a $1 even increase for maintaining their certification. I would not want to deviate from that $1 just because that's what other departments utilize. So not to say that that couldn't be renegotiated in union negotiations, but that's where that is settled. It wouldn't be before the salary board. The purpose of the salary board would be to create a new position, not a wage change. So when it comes to whether or not, I guess to recap that, if you wanted to do the $1, I could be in favor of that. No real issue there.
And truly, that was rounding that number up to $15. That was just easy math.
Yeah, understood. So then when it comes to the third position, to some degree, you don't have to sell me on that. We pushed for this for a while, didn't really understand why a full-blown sheriff's deputy, had to be an Act 120 certified deputy, had to be at single point at all times. At the same time, where the conversation broke down in times previous had to do with whether or not we were adding more bodies or not. If you're essentially saying, I want to do a hybrid where I have an armed security presence, obviously that's great. And right now you don't have enough staff, so I think it's a great move. But ultimately, if we're increasing the number of guards, but not decreasing the number of sheriff's deputies, ultimately that's probably not going to help the county budget, but it would probably help augment your staffing. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of data to know whether or not you would or would not have overstaffed sheriff's office in terms of Act 120 deputies. But I also see that you're in a bind right now with the increased turnover, and so I could kind of go either way on that.
Again, that $1 I don't think would make or break this. I'll call it a program or this submission. Yes, the bind again. If the world was again, how many times do we hear this a week? Normal. In these classes at Penn State at our training academy were normal. I still had that 6-month overlap of hiring somebody to get them through that process. And I just came back from Penn State. I was down there 2 weeks myself, and I learned a lot back about that. The advantage of me, we'll just say hiring person X and sending them through the Sheriff's Academy is they are certified in the state of Pennsylvania to act as a sheriff or deputy sheriff. So Conowongo Police Department's not headhunting my guys. The city of Warren's not headhunting my guys. These are guys that are signing on pretty much for a career at the Warren County Sheriff's Office, which gives me some stability over the next 15 years that I can continue this, God willing, and the people agree. So that does give me some stability. The flip side to that, I hire the goods and bads. I hire an Act 120, which is a police officer. I hire an active Act 120 certified man. He works here for 6 months. Historically, we outfit him to the tune of, give or take, $3,500. We put all this time, money, and effort into him. And the next police department within 40 miles of here, whether it's Kane Borough, Bradford PD, Erie City PD, Conowongo, they move on. So that dual-edged sword of training them as a sheriff's deputy, in my opinion, gives us some longevity because they don't have the option to go into a police job in itself. Again, the other option would be to beg for more deputies, again, to augment that single point, to augment the court schedule. And this unequivocally is a cheaper route than begging to start a guy at, again, $4 more an hour right out of the gate, benefits, retirement package, and everything that goes along with that. I think I can, once my staff is completely trained up and I'm up to complement, I feel I could budget. I think I could do the job asked of me from the courts with the staff that I have for the time being, if this third man would free up one of my deputies.
Okay. Questions?
Do the current guards, like the current part-time positions, those do not receive any type of benefit aside from the pay, right?
It's strictly, it's a paycheck, period. Both of them brought benefits from a previous life.
So a couple of things. One is, so prior to obviously the Sheriff Zabel being on board, years ago, we approved another sheriff deputy that was going to walk the halls. This is prior to Single Point. So at that time, the sheriff's office had 7 full-timers, I believe, and then that would have been the 8th. And then it wasn't long after that the sheriff kind of, unilaterally installed the Single Point. And then since then, we've added a part-time, these part-time guards to put on there. And then we've had the full-timer that's there. Is it, in lieu of doing something like this, would it be worth it to do like a legitimate time study, and review the security of the courthouse overall as a group and kind of have a discussion about options rather than hiring another position? Just because, I don't know that I've never seen work that's where we've kind of vetted having people there contractually, looking for agencies or, or even the efficacy of how the Single Point is set up at this point. It's always been kind of a thing that just happened, and then we've kind of tried to accommodate it. And I guess I understand what Sheriff Zabel is suggesting. I guess my question is like, do we have a larger discussion about Single Point and how to operate it in the county before we make a decision to add people?
I guess for my I probably wouldn't support or not support this particular proposal. I'd like to learn a little bit more about it and kind of look through what others do as it relates to Single Point and other counties. It relates to, staffing. And then just, kind of take a little bit more time to digest what your proposal is actually. As far as arming someone, I'm not an expert in that area, but I think that we have had probably one of the most precarious situations in the county in many years as it relates to COVID, as it relates to Black Lives Matter. And I guess if those individuals weren't armed at that particular time, and that we've made it through a year of tumultuousness, what's different now? So those are just some of my comments.
And I guess I'll talk about the armed. What makes the difference now is that we'll just say is if everything works as it should, I can, without certainty, because certainty is the key word, but without splitting hairs, 99%, I can almost, to the certainty, guarantee there's not a gun in a courtroom to protect the judge, the onlookers, the wife who's taking their children, the PFA, tempers flare in the courtroom. And let's go back to then and now. 40 years ago, I bet you guns came in and out of this courtroom every day of the week. But just times were different. Life was valued in a different rate. Nowadays, we're living on houses. Again, PFAs in my mind are number one. Domestic violence is the biggest unknown in our world of law enforcement. Well, that spills over to PFA. If I was going to, I'll just say, lose it in the court, it would be when somebody was either going to sell my house through a sheriff's sale or somebody was going to come take my children from me. Not if I was I go to jail for a weekend of DUI. I know I'm going to jail for a weekend of DUI. I got arrested. I went through that process. In my opinion, the civil law, which I just learned formally, is more dangerous, in my opinion, than criminal law. Because again, you are taking these people's lives from them. There's an order that says I'm going to sell their house. Man, that's huge. Versus again, a weekend in jail. that I knew I messed up coming home from a Christmas party. I mean, that's where I'm at. So the difference now to then, and again, I'll just use the now, the Black Lives Matter, the whatever it was, the Second Amendment. There's a guy on our corner on our property with an AR slung on his shoulder. He's not breaking the law, but if he turns around or walks through the courtroom doors, that's instantly a humongous problem. And I'm suggesting, I don't know if this is the time or place, but what I really like from this COVID at the front door, it's locked. Somebody can't bum rush that door. 10 people cannot bum rush that door because it has to be opened by somebody. And I like that. I'm going to ask for a big handle to be put on the inside of that door. So if you and I struggle at that door of pulling it open, so you let your 8 buddies in, I have nothing to grab onto that push bar right now. I have nothing. You will open that door, you will take that door from me, and your buddies are going to literally trample me to get in this building, and there's not a thing I can do about it. That's real life. To think we're special.
So
to think
a
we're
couple
special,
of things.
it just hasn't happened. Thank God, and I hope it never does in the next 1,000 years. But if it does, it's ultimately going to be a failure, in my opinion, on my end, because you guys have put me in a position to make sure you're safe.
Can I just comment real quickly? And I know I'm speaking out of turn, Commissioner Eggleston, but I do need to be in court, and I know that I don't have a vote in this matter. First of all, to say it's never happened, I'd remind you all of 1954 when Judge Wade was shot and killed at the bench. First time in the United States that happened. That happened here in Warren. That's historical. Secondly, I appreciate all of the Second Amendment, Black Lives Matter. We've had a number of congregants on the corner of the backside of the courthouse all through the summer and early fall for various reasons. And unfortunately, or fortunately for us, nothing turned violent. Nothing was organized in the sense of we need to come in and we need to open the corridors because people have respected COVID at this point. That can change. People are pretty frustrated. And I'm seeing a lot more overdose deaths and everything else in this community that I hadn't seen. I'd agree with, again, the sheriff in terms of PFAs. Many times PFAs run into the evening hours, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And with that, when people are in the parking lot afterwards, it's always comforting to know that I have somebody in the courtroom, but usually you keep an extra staff for that as well. And I appreciate that because it's not usually what happens in the courtroom, it's what happens as soon as they exit the courthouse, what we can't control sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I'm just very appreciative for your services, and I'm appreciative for you looking for ways to save costs with retired police people. Most of the people you have been trained in some form of police work, and that's been very helpful. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate Commissioner Eggleston for you letting me speak, and I apologize for interrupting, but I really do need to get to court, but I did want to weigh in on this. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, Ron.
I think at this
Just
time,
a couple really quick, because I actually have to get going as well. Just two things. One is I think that this is a good illustration of the fact that we need to have a larger discussion. There's been a metal detector outside the courtroom for quite a while, at least a couple of decades as far as I know. So there's always been a focus on security at the courtroom, and what happened in the past 4 or 5 years is the change of the move to single point. I am not opposed to single point, and I understand the issue of security, but the second point I would make is like what you were saying about having the door locked, or people, could potentially bum rush the thing and a number of other things. Totally understand that, but once things get back to normal, the employees in this courthouse are going to want access to the side entrances and a number of other things, which are going to completely nullify any lock you put on the front door, or trying to prevent a group from rushing. And I guess my point is like, if we're going to talk about security in the courthouse, then I think that we need to have a larger conversation about what that looks like. Because from my perspective, I'm only going to vote for something along these lines if I know that we're going to figure out, if we're going to spend money, that it's 100% justified, and that we're getting the actual security that we're paying for. And two is that is to also have a discussion about what the costs are currently, and if there's a revenue neutral way of doing that and accommodating it. Because we've continually added, we've continually expanded, and I have a feeling that what's going to happen is that in 6 months or a year, when COVID calms down, you're going to see a push to get everything else opened up. And single point, to me, at that point, is not going to be. It's going to be a nice show, but it's not going to do what everybody's talking about it doing. That's just my perspective.
And I would love to have the big discussion, because again, back to single point, that's what it should be. Single point. Whether it's COVID, no COVID, I apologize, you got to walk 85 steps around the corner of the outside of this building. But if you want the security of a single point, it has to remain a single point in good times and bad. Because again, we have that side door. If you do 3 minutes of recon on this building, you're coming through that side entrance with a lady with bags in her hand and her coffee in the other hand. You're going to sit in that little well down there, and you're going to bum rush the door, and then we're reaction force by then. And whatever happens between here and there is that guy's choosing. So yeah, I would love to
the
have
only people. Yeah, I think that needs to happen, and I think that once we get the new fiscal administrator on, we can sit down and talk about all of these issues, and maybe have like a picture that we paint in order to make it happen.
All right, I think at this point there's two possibilities. One would be a motion to create a third part-time position in the sheriff's office as a guard. The other would be to table. I think I've heard at least two people that want to table, to have a further discussion on single point overall. Is that accurate?
For me, it is, yes.
I'd make a motion to table until we have the ability to research the setup.
And I will start researching other counties. Again, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, but I will get some feedback or some factual statistics on how other counties, give or take our size and our population as in the ways of courthouse employees. I can do that research as well for you.
So from my perspective, I guess Jeff has made a motion. We need, I guess, to go from there, make a second, then we have more discussion, I guess.
Right. And the motion to table is non-debatable. So I've had a motion. Do I have a second?
I would like the motion to second it.
All right. The motion before us is to table. Again, it's non-debatable. If you vote yes, that means we've tabled it and we're going to adjourn. If you vote no and the noes have it, then that means we can continue to have this debate today, and we're have another vote on something else. So all those in favor of the motion to table, please state aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Nay? I didn't hear any nays, therefore the ayes have it.
So before we adjourn, this is not a debate. This is just a perspective of, if we didn't have single point, what is our liability? And I guess for the commissioners, I don't know if you would want to check while Sheriff Zabel is doing his research, if one of the commissioners wants to look at or contact CCAP and say, what's your position if we don't have, like, what's our liability if we don't have single point? What do we open ourselves up to?
Yeah, we actually have had that conversation with the John Soliday in the past, so we can pull that information back up. But yeah, agreed. Let's set up another time to discuss. Sheriff, why don't you and I start with start the conversation at our regular meeting?
Sure.
All right. There's nothing else on the agenda, so I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Bye-bye.